Welcome, everyone. So incredibly honored and grateful for the opportunity to speak today. First, I'd like to recognize all survivors that have been forced into homelessness. You are heard, you're supported, and you are valued. I also would like to extend my infinite gratitude to those that have been involved in the process of me reclaiming my life. Your presence has made more of a difference than I can express. To begin, for most of my life, making choices was not something I knew was an option. As children, we don't get to make all that many options or, choices, right? But imagine for a minute life happening all around you and being ignored, dragged along, or to blame for that chaos. As a child, my family moved frequently. We were never in a place longer than 2 years. I grew up with an older brother, just 1 year apart. We really relied on each other. Violent abuse and neglect were prevalent in our household. My father abused my mother regularly, and I remember often chasing behind at a young age to stop him from reaching her. That took a toll. Fast forward to late teens, I was 17, just received my GED and got a job. My father introduced me to the idea of joining the military. Being so young, both parents have to sign for your enlistment, so they did. About 1 year later, I met a man in my unit. Things moved rather quickly. He proposed about 4 months or so after we started dating, and then we got news our unit was to deploy. I found out about 3 weeks later I was pregnant. If you're pregnant, deployment is out of the question. I left a few weeks shy of my unit's departure, and it was decided now I would be his wife and a new mom. We had our baby girl, but our relationship ended pretty quickly due to his abuse. As I picked up the pieces of my life with my baby in tow, I grasped the idea that I will now be doing this on my own. He didn't call much, so we carried on. My daughter was 2 or so when I met someone new. He swept me off my feet. I just knew he was the one because he said he felt it too. After a month, things moved fast. He was staying over often, popping up at my job, calling me at all hours. I thought this meant he really cared and just wanted me to be safe. Soon to follow, I found out I was pregnant. Though he showed some signs of jealousy, I brushed it off and he convinced me to move in. I just knew at this point he's completely serious about us. Why else would he ask me to move in? He said this will help me save money. He's just looking out. Things were actually really, really great, but not for long. I went through a cycle of physical, emotional, financial, and sexual abuse with him 7 times before I was really done. And they say statistically, it can take a victim an average of 7 times before they leave. Why is that? Why does she go back? Well, he proposed, he apologized every time, and blamed his childhood. That's why. And having experienced violence early in life, I learned that somehow my brain wired itself to believe I can heal an abuser. If I just do this or do that or love him a little more, he'll stop. He won't do it again. There's no way it can get worse. But it does, and it did. Right before my final exit, I attended a funeral out of town. I would be gone no longer than a week, and he was to keep the baby. Upon my return, he refused access. She was 9 months old and hidden from me for 5 weeks. During that time, I called police stations, did well child checks. I tried what seemed like everything. They all told me there's nothing we can do. He even showed officers some form of false legal documents, and the police told me to cease contacting them about this. Nobody would help me find my baby. I almost gave up until I went to the courthouse and they found there was no orders in the system. That night, I was able to locate her. I got a U-Haul, packed up everything I could, and left. We were going to start fresh, a few hours away, and never look back. Not so much. A couple weeks later, while the girls and I were at a friend's, the one we shall not name arrived at a family member's home with court documents demanding I bring our daughter. Since there were false documents before, there was no way I believed that. Frighteningly, he found where my friends lived, family members, and went door to door all hours of the night. This led me to seeking a domestic violence shelter. I was terrified. Apparently, the documents he had were real, and we were ordered to show at court. While our daughter was less than 1 year old until about 3.5, a judge ordered shared custody week on, week off. Her health seemed to decline after visits with her father, hospital visits due to incidents of dehydration, thrush, severe diaper rash, some bruising, but the judge ordered no change in custody. When we began exchanging from her daycare center, that is when the stalking and intimidation became severe. He found where I lived, vandalized my car on several occasions. He would find me at restaurants, had me attacked and robbed, and I would move from roommates to new apartments to safe houses, all before my oldest made it to first grade. It was brutal, but no one would listen, and he never stopped. I knew I hit my breaking point for the last time when he pushed her toward the M exchange. He pushed her hard enough to the point she almost fell. We didn't go home that night. I just was tired, afraid, and done. I thought, go to the police? No. They dismissed me too many times already. DCF? No. They rejected my concerns, stating there just wasn't enough evidence. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. I was alone. He knew where I lived, where my family lived, where my friends lived, where I worked, where my daughter's schools were. I made the decision to go to another domestic violence shelter, forced back into homelessness while I solidified my exit strategy. While at this shelter, I met a woman who was in her late 40s. She was on the run herself, but from a place called Roxbury, Massachusetts. After sharing my story, she mentioned, "Why don't you go to Boston? It's beautiful, and I bet you could really find some help there." I started my research and came to a decision I called SafeLink, Massachusetts statewide domestic violence hotline. The operator on the other end said, "All shelters are full, but call every day, morning and night. That is when we do our updates." So I did for 3 weeks. I finally got a call from a place named Casamirna. They did an intake and told me they'll be back in touch. I got a call the next day welcoming me as long as I got there by next Friday. We came up with a plan. In 5 days, I got everything in order to drive us across the country in my little 4-door Chevy Malibu, and my 2 littles secured safely in the back. We were off. And as frightening as it may sound, it was liberating at the same time. I got to choose. Despite what everyone was telling me or dismissing, I made it an adventure for us. It took 3 days, but we made it. And I had no clue what to expect. I knew nothing about Boston. But within 7 months, I fixed my credit, went through therapy, connected with the VA, and found a home in an incredible school district. I realized this powerful woman has been here all along. I just needed someone on my path to show me. And that's what Casamirna's staff have done and continue to do for others, fortunately, due to the people who believe in their movement. My mission now is to create a world where being a woman is not an obstacle. I want to give survivors the hope that it is possible to thrive after years of loss and feelings of despair. I hope today what you took from my story wasn't just a woman scorned or a victim to her circumstances, but a message that so many people were given an opportunity to respond. And each entity, whether it was the justice system, healthcare, education system, social services, every person I asked to help me had a choice. You who are listening, you have an opportunity to respond and make a choice. No matter how long or seemingly impossible, you get to choose. And when we collectively make a choice for the good of our people, that's when we find what we're truly made of. Thank you.